In doing so, our endeavor is to enrich people's lives, rebuild resilient and responsible communities, and strengthen the cultural fabric of our community and city. For this evening, we have a series of three conversations exploring the legacy and contemporary practices in performance. We begin today evening with Revanta Sarabhai. Revanta is an actor, dancer, and choreographer from Ahmedabad and forms the third generation of artists from the legendary Sarabhai family after his grandmother Mrinalini and mother Mallika Sarabhai. Revanta will be talking about his process of creating performances that are grounded in traditional practice of Bharatanatyam while weaving stories that are relevant to the society and times we live in. He will also be sharing about his upcoming work that is co-produced with G5A. He will be joined by our Associate Artistic Director, Ishan Benegal, to shed more light on the project. With that, I'd like to welcome Revanta Sarabhai. Over to you, Revanta.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Priyanka, for that introduction. I imagine that if we weren't in the middle of this pandemic, that I would have been at G5A and that this festival would have been live, and I would probably be physically in the black box performing for this crowd. Um, but so instead of using this session to talk a lot, I'd like to just set a little bit of context and show you some of my work and try and let the work speak for itself. Born into a family of artists, my early introduction to dance and theater ensured a deep, deep love for the performing arts. As a young Bharatanatyam student learning the art form, I was fortunate to have incredible role models around me, artists who were breaking conventions, experimenting with form and theme, and generally just pushing boundaries of the classical tradition. So for me, the question has never really been, what is the relevance of a 2,000-year-old art form like Bharatanatyam in today's world? Perhaps more so the question has been, what can we learn from it in order to make an impact on the world today? For centuries, Bharatanatyam as an art form has been a medium to communicate religious and spiritual themes, and mostly to tell stories from mythology. But watching Bharatanatyam up close as a child, I was fascinated by the superhero-like tales of Rama and Krishna. Seeing the stories of Ekalavya and Nandanar come alive through dance, I became sensitive to things like the cruel practice of untouchability, long before the media started highlighting atrocities against Dalits. I learned about the concept of Ardhanarishvara, the androgynous deity that symbolizes the synthesis of masculine and feminine energies into one body, long before discussions on trans rights or gender as a fluid spectrum became mainstream. And over the past few years in my own work, I've begun a journey choosing contemporary subjects, writing new pieces, and creating work that follows the classical structure and format of Bharatanatyam and of classical dance in general, a form which I think is so incredibly versatile, and yet using this classical form and structure to explore themes that go well beyond the traditional. You know, Bharatanatyam is full of poems of bhakti. Some of these often run the risk of glossing over rather problematic aspects of Hinduism, though. Take the story of Nandanar, for instance. Nandanar is a great Shiva devotee, yet he is never allowed into the temple because he is born a low caste and untouchable. As the story is retold over centuries, people praise him and say, even though he is not allowed into the temple, just see how strong Nandanar's bhakti is. Isn't it time we ask the question, why is he not allowed into the temple? The well-known song, Varuhalamo, by the famous poet Gopal Krishna Bharati, tells the story of Nandanar in first person. And in this poem, essentially, Nandanar is pleading to Shiva, asking him to be allowed into the temple so that he may get just one glimpse of the deity. He talks of the many trials and tribulations that he has been through, and how despite the sin of being born a low caste, all he wants is to do darshan. Retellings of Nandanar's story from the 7th to the 19th centuries all have him accept his fate lying down and rely on so-called miracles. But what about the Nandanar of today? I'd like to show you an excerpt of a new piece that I've been performing over the last couple of years, which is my interpretation of this song, Varuhalamo, with a slightly different ending. So here it is. So, in my interpretation of this centuries old song, my Nandanar asks Shiva and says, many things have changed in this world. I am still an outcast. Perhaps you can enter this earth and change things. Perhaps the Nandanas of tomorrow will not accept their fate lying down. And perhaps those of us who are privileged can start asking more pertinent questions. In another piece, as part of this exploration of the traditional formats within Bharatanatyam and injecting them with new themes, I came to the exploration of the Hindu concept of time being cyclical, with our present universe being just one instance of an infinite cycle of creation, sustenance, and destruction. Of course, we have a trinity of gods, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara, to whom we have attributed these roles of creator, sustainer, and destroyer. So I'd like to present to you another short piece that follows again the classical format of Bharatanatyam, in this case, a kirtanam, which is traditionally a song in praise of and describing the characteristics of a deity, here the Hindu trinity. But this is a kirtanam with a twist that, to me, attempts to firmly ground it in today's world and reality. So here is Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara.
Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara.
You know, my guru, who is about 75 and who has been working with me to choreograph some of these new pieces, when we were working together and when she first read the last line of this poem, which says, Shiva, perhaps we don't need you anymore. She was a bit taken aback. She was like, Arey beta, it's a very bold statement, you know, telling Shiva that we don't need him anymore. Of course, the piece for me isn't a rejection of Shiva at all, as much as it is a reflection of the times that we live in and the impact that we as a species are having on the planet and on each other. As I have continued to look at and analyze the classical Bharatanatyam repertoire, another thing that stands out to me is how it conforms to very conventional and sometimes even stereotypical gender roles. Take the format of the love song, for example. Historically, love songs, or padams as they are called in Bharatanatyam, dancers, usually female, play the role of the anguished lover, longing and pining for their beau, who is typically away on an adventure or fighting a war. The dancer dances her love for him, she pines for him and waits for his return so that they may reunite. But of course, times have changed. In a dance theater piece called LDR, I explore what it means to love in the 21st century, with so many of us separated by long distance, negotiating our relationships through technology and the internet. So, this next clip for you is an excerpt of a full length dance theater production called LDR. Here it is.
Hi, Scarlett, missed you. Leave a message. When we are together, I lose myself in her. Her fragrance, her sweet voice, they entrance me. Her, the doe-eyed one, who wears the short skirt, who lives across the ocean. When we are together, I lose myself. And then she says she must go, for she has work to do. And I am left bereft. I try and call her long distance. I email her, try and find her on Skype. But all I get is a disembodied voice saying that she cannot take my call. But when we are together, times have changed. This I know. That she, like the ancient heroines, will not sit and wait for me the whole day. Her work is as important as mine. She too seeks fulfillment of the inner self. But Krishna, I miss her. Make her miss me as much. Oh Krishna, I love her. Make her love
Such are the times we live in. So connected through the internet and yet so incredibly fragmented and far away from each other. This journey exploring new themes in Bharatanatyam has led me to a very interesting creative process. And as you've seen, I've done some exploration very much within the classical form, and then some exploration stepping out of the classical boundaries, embracing a little bit of storytelling and theater, and so on. Thank you for being a part of this session. At this point, I'd like to invite Ishan to join me so that we can use the last 5 or 6 minutes to talk about this new project that we're working on together. Hi, Ishan.
Hey, super excited to talk about that. I mean, I think, this has been absolutely wonderful just to see, the progression. It feels like it doesn't do justice, but of sort of I think your approach also, and I think it further solidifies, I think, what we would have had, the show probably last month at the Black Box. So hopefully sooner rather than later. I mean, I guess just a great place to start is maybe if you want to share that the story that you shared with us, after these performances, sort of that engagement with audiences and how that sort of, maybe planted a seed for this next piece.
So I think two primary things that are relevant here. One is that through this recent exploration of exploring modern day themes through Bharatanatyam, a couple of things have happened. One is that I've had audiences across cities, both in India and the West, come to me and say, oh my God, we didn't realize Bharatanatyam could be so interesting and could actually talk about anything other than stories from mythology, because it is rare. The other thing that I've noticed is that the subject matter or the themes that I'm exploring really seem to reach out and connect with the audiences. So whether it's long distance relationships with audiences coming to me and saying, oh my God, we just imagined ourselves in that position because I've been there, or we see our sons and daughters do this day in and day out on their phones and on their iPads, that live performance has this way of reaching out to and connecting to a deeper level in the audience that very few other mediums have. The piece that we showed today, Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, has had a tremendous response, and I think the main thing that I've noticed is most people who have seen that have had an emotional and an empathetic response to this reality of what we are doing to the earth and to this planet, and they've had a very emotional response to the destruction that is portrayed in that piece. And I think that is really what led me to this idea of wanting to do more about the environment, and specifically to do something about climate change, because as we all know, as all the data and the science points out, it is entirely a human-made disaster.
Absolutely.
And the only things that are going to either slow it down, at least, if not reverse it, are going to happen through human intervention. So this idea came about of creating a performance that talked about climate change, but in a way that created a personal, emotional, and empathetic connect with the audience, as opposed to what a lecture by a scientist, let's say, would do, which is to lay the very dry statistics and facts, which are actually alarming, but for some reason don't create an emotional response in us. So that's really where I
think just to add to that, I think, that sound. I mean, it sounds great because, even though, like you said, the statistics are so alarming, but it almost feels like we're at a distance from them, for whatever reason, whether it's oh, that's not my problem, or oh, it's
it's
too large for me
or
to
the
take
government
on.
has to do something about it, or
Yeah, exactly. But I think I think the approach that you're taking or will be taking, and also I think the approach of the arts as a whole, right, is to create that emotion and that engagement done so well, like you mentioned, with some of the conversations, is that it works so well when you have that level of representation as well. I think where people can watch it, and regardless of what the specifics might be, there is something that hits home. It's like, oh, I've been there, I've done this, regardless of gender, sexuality, any, and experience. And I think that's something that, if you can talk about that a bit more, because, I know you mentioned early on, and I think we have a couple of questions that touch on it, is the idea of, I guess, being exposed to the idea of gender fluidity in some sense early on, right? And how did that help shape your approach also in life as well?
Right. Well, I think I have to say that I grew up in an environment where there were very strong female role models, and I grew up in a family where gender was not considered a primary defining factor of one's being, which is unlike most Indian households, I have to say, where you're first a boy or a girl, and that's a big part of your growing up.
Yeah.
And for me or for my sister, it really wasn't in the family that we grew up. So I think that in itself very early on shaped this idea of gender, in a sense, being a non-issue in terms of how you tackle life and so on, but also I think heightened the awareness that there is a tremendous amount of gender discrimination in the world that we live in the society that we live in. And in some ways, as a straight male, I fall into a very sort of privileged, comfortable bracket in the particular society that we live in. And so I think that has been something that I have always wanted to explore, and that I have always wanted to kind of do something about. And perhaps the first time that it really showed up in my work is when I created this piece on long distance relationships, because I wanted to give a broad representation, not just of the kinds of relationships in terms of the things that partners go through, but also in terms of sexuality and orientation. So there are multiple stories that I weave in and out in that piece, and there's a homosexual male couple whose story comes up. There are heterosexual couples, but where the kind of more conventional gender roles are reversed.
Right, and the dynamics.
So that's been something that I feel like I still want to continue exploring, because I've probably only scratched the surface in that sense.
Sure. No, that's great. I guess one of the things that we discussed before this was why we at G5A felt this piece made I guess sense, or we felt that this was a direction that we were looking to take as well. And I guess I'll just spend a moment or two on that, and then we can take some questions, because I think we have some good ones. I think a lot of what you shared with us this evening really further solidified that. If I haven't, I think I mentioned that already. But I think a lot of the work that we're doing is sort of opening things up, and adding to different layers, but also acknowledging and looking at what's already been done. We're not. I think there are a lot of different art forms for their appropriate context that focus on erasing the past and creating a new future. And I think that some people today might be doing that for different reasons. And but I feel that, you know, this is something that we're constantly grappling with as a foundation, you know, Center for the Contemporary, that it's crucial to keep that legacy, if you will, in mind, or, you know, constantly in view, so that you're able to really learn, you know, and take the best from those, you know, like you've demonstrated, sort of explained so well. And so I think that that's something that we're really looking forward to, you know, with this piece, and sort of how does that impact different people, you know, on this emotional and cellular level.
Right. Yeah, I think it's not an either or for me. I think there are many scenarios and many cases in which I feel like there is an incredible depth in the forms that I have learned, that I have inherited, that have existed for centuries, where there are things to learn from, there are things to embrace and carry forward. I think there are many things that require some reinterpretation, some reinvention, perhaps. And perhaps one comes across occasionally aspects which do seem outdated, which either can be left behind or definitely need a readapting to keep them relevant in today's world.
Yeah, no, that couldn't have said it better. Okay, so there's one from Anish Andheria who's commented, contemporary, hilarious, real fusion. And he's asking, how daunting is it to perform your own contemporary compositions in front of your highly accomplished family members, especially your mother? And there's a addendum, I guess, an addition, which says, as you explore beyond the boundaries of such a traditional form with a rich history, what do you say to quote unquote purists?
Right. Well, so I think I have a very interesting relationship with my mother, in the sense that, of course, she's my mother, but then for many years she was a teacher and a mentor. And then as I grew older and as we started working together, we became more like partners. She has also been one of my biggest critics. And she's one of these people who won't mince words. She will really just give it to you as it is, as she thinks it. And I think growing up together, we do have a shared aesthetic and a shared sort of creative sense. So in most cases, we're in agreement. But of course, like any working relationship, there are disagreements. There are things that we see differently. And I think we have a very healthy working relationship in that sense, where she is also open to taking criticism or to accepting a different point of view. And fortunately, she doesn't take this stance of, oh, I have 40 years more experience than you, or 30 years more experience than you, so you know, I'm always right. So in fact, it's been a very democratic and equal working relationship. In terms of my sort of, like someone said, you know, exploring beyond boundaries and so on. Honestly, in my own family, it's not something new. I mean, my grandmother in the 50s was doing work that was considered controversial, was doing work that was considered avant-garde. She was breaking conventions. And so, and my mother in very many ways has kind of followed that and even sort of gone beyond that in terms of challenging the status quo, in terms of really going against what would be considered traditional. And so I think if I had stuck to traditional classical dance and then kind of done only that would have been a bit of a surprise to them. The fact that I am raising questions and that I am looking to explore beyond that is actually considered normal in my family. So it's not something that is.
So yeah, it's more of the, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And just to answer very quickly that last question, which is, you know, what do purists say, or what do kind of the elders who might look at this as meddling with an art form, which maybe I have no place in doing. I think I really have to say that on the whole, I have received a phenomenal reaction to these new pieces, even from quote unquote purists and elders. I've had sort of the Mylapore Mamis when I performed in Chennai come to me and said, "Oh, very interesting that you're keeping the pure Pandanallur classical structure, and yet within that finding ways to explore new themes."
Right.
And of course, there's the odd person who will come to me and say, "Yeah, it's very nice, but you should do the Natana Madina a little more often." And I mean, that's more a reflection of I suppose their preferences or their kind of needing to stick to tradition. But I don't think it's something that's ever going to discourage me from doing this work because I can see the kind of impact it's having.
Right. No, that's wonderful. And I think, I mean, there are a few more questions, and I think we could spend more time, talking about this. But unfortunately, I think we do have to close now. So we have
another session coming up.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Revanta, for this wonderful sort of sharing and discussion, and thank you to everyone who's joined us virtually. We'll share the links to the next two sessions for the evening. And so for more information, please visit the G5A website, and hopefully we'll be able to have some information on when we'll showcase Revanta's new piece sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ishan. Bye-bye. Thanks.